Hey guys, it's Thigh Company here. Welcome to today's live stream. Today is March the 16th, 2024. And welcome to today's live stream. And for today's live stream, we're going to be talking about a work episode or work related themed episode where a few times during my, uh, I guess, last 10 years of work career, uh, where we've had incidents where people were selling drugs at work. And what I mean by that is the stuff that you don't want, your kids to be having, and things that are not really considered legal. Um, so I can think of in my own personal career three time periods of when we had some pretty interesting stuff. The first two are probably the more eventful. The third one, you could almost maybe argue it's harmless, but I don't think it may be entirely legal because of that. It's also kind of a sketchy situation to say. So the first one was back during when I first worked at the movie theater. And the first movie theater, this would have been from 2014 through 2017. So this would have been, from like 10 to 7 years ago. And so this involved a few different weird things. There we suspected there probably would have been something going at least at a minimum because I know there was a lot of people who did smoke because there was a smoking issue at one point, and I do know that we did have a sheriff who came by there who did catch someone, but I think it was just smoking cigarettes, but they still like fired the person because you're not supposed to smoke on the premises because I think it's doing it maybe because it's like a public building or something like that. And because of this, it gets weird because hold on one second, I got people yelling in the other room here. So what happened was we were having a lot of new people coming and going, and uh, I and one of the original managers who worked at this movie theater was part of what I would call that's like a sketchy crew. And what I mean by sketchy crew is that they have what I know what's the best way to explain it, like arguably a dark background. What I mean by that is that uh, people would consider this to be not the best background, as in terms of safety, in terms of like personal intent. Like I guess one way to explain it is like my former coworker John would call it. They give off dark energy, right? So one of the weird uh, things, I guess, kind of trying to figure out the best way to explain it because I still have people yelling in another room here. So we had one manager, and to try to protect IDs, I won't talk about all the specific information, but we had one manager who was um, from what I call sketchy background, and we kind of don't know what his true intentions were while he was working there. The claim was that the guy apparently was from our city, but we don't think that might be true looking back at it nowadays. Because, like, the rumor is that the guy was making these fake claims that he was from South Africa. And later it turns out he was not at all from South Africa. But the guy claimed he was from South Africa, that he was from like apartheid, like what's it called? Like back when people of certain demographics were being uh, oppressed, I guess is one way to explain it. So because of this, history, he felt it was appropriate to attack certain other demographics. Um, I guess to be more specific, the guy was quote unquote black, but he wasn't really black. But I think he was maybe mixed. But he was against people who, in his mind, were white because of that apartheid South African history. And but unfortunately, it's bad in a way that the guy was trying to take revenge on a group that didn't even have any history to him. So uh, what I think happened was, I know he was attacking one of my coworkers named Sean, and the reason he was attacking Sean was because Sean had a good history. Sean was a regular person, but Sean had been at that movie theater for probably when I had joined there at least 10 to 15 years, meaning that Sean has a pretty long history working at that theater. And I think what happened with Sean was a manager and a regular employee, and he kind of worked 2, 3 different positions at the same time. And this manager, I guess the best way to say, not really say his name, but to give kind of an idea who I'm talking about. Um, I'm getting yelled at again. Sorry about that. 1 second here. Чего? Я занят. Что? Горит? Он может ждать? Sorry about that. The third time this stream that people were trying to bug me today. So this South African manager, who wasn't really South African, by the way, kept attacking Sean because he felt that Sean was a threat to his career advancement at the movie theater. And the only thing that helped the guy out was apparently he had the way that the management hierarchy worked at the theater was that if you had a degree, a college degree, meaning a bachelor's degree or 4-year degree, then you be like the top. Like our general manager, I think, was the only person at the movie theater who had a bachelor's degree or 4-year degree or graduate degree. Hello, Mia is back. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the live stream. Glad to have you here, by the way. But yeah, so the general manager had a degree. I think the assistant GM, so person who's covering the regular GM when the GM's not there. I don't know if I think she was like finishing up a degree, and then all the regular managers, who was considered to be like the first tier management, they had basically were all in part of this one university system, which in our area it would have been the UNC system. And what was going on was that they also had a lot of history working at prior movie theaters, mainly being Regal Cinemas. And so that's why they were basically had this like clique almost as a management clique. And they were very hesitant to allow anybody outside the clique get up into management position. For example, Sean was at one point a manager and then was demoted back to an employee for some reason. And it's unclear why. And eventually I'm going to try to get a hold of him. He claimed, because he told me it was because he felt the GM didn't like him at that point. But to get back to the story here, let's see here. Apparently, that manager who hated Sean or was against Sean, they like what he was doing was first attacking Sean's physical, like what do you call it, physical capabilities or physical condition. And unfortunately, there was an incident where Sean was forced to clean movie theaters. So he went into the movie theaters and he was busy. He had to sweep, and we had these like weird thick carpet instead of it being like hardwood or like I know in some theaters they have like a concrete flooring. So apparently what happened was like Sean was so exhausted that he was like getting dizzy and he was barely able to stand. And so he was like wobbling kind of like back and forth. And this manager was laughing at Sean for being exhausted. And Sean, being exhausted and he felt terrible. And at that point, I think I was working in the kitchen. I was trying to figure out how to help Sean instead of because Sean was not only was he exhausted, Sean looked very unwell, and uh, apparently, like Sean was thinking about even going to the hospital at that point too. But apparently, what happened was um, the that manager, like later on, when he realized, oh, I'm in this position of power, and for me to basically go up, somebody had to from the upper management had to leave, and apparently what happened was he had his own connection become that higher up manager who was later like an HR manager, um, kind of cover him in case something were to happen, which I later found out a few things were going on. We had a group of new people come in. We had a cook named Tony, who was later one of my good friends, a bunch of Hispanics, and just a good mix, I would say, because the Hispanics were great. When they were in the kitchen, we had a very strong kitchen, and um, but I had a feeling that the upper management didn't like them for some reason, and I don't know why. Because what ended up happening later on was that we had a very nice this Dominican guy who was the head manager of the kitchen. They later fired him because he was like he wasn't doing what they wanted. Um, and when that guy was fired, I think what happened was, from what I understood, was this South African manager was going and um, on top of his regular job was trying to make money selling drugs apparently. And I was told this by several co-workers, a few people who I don't remember their names anymore because they long quit and I've lost their contacts. I know Tony told me at one point that he was blackmailed at the like right behind the movie theater, that like either you do this or you'll get in trouble. Like there was some sort of blackmail retaliation thing going on. And once that started going, so crazy to a degree, apparently what happened was they sold the movie theater to a different company, but everybody stayed. And so they, even with some of the current stuff that's going on, it's still pretty sketchy. But and I know back during when I was working at the kitchen, there was a few weird things going on too. Like for example, we had a one coworker who was from a similar demographic from the South African manager, who was nice with everybody, who was friendly, unlike that manager. He was using weird code words to describe drugs. For example, I think he said he would use the code word like for like weed for some reason. That was a very popular one. Um, and so he would say things like, "Oh, I got that orange. Oh, you want that orange?" And it was like really strange and like bizarre. Really, was the best way to explain it. And I know Tony was not part of any of that. He didn't want any involvement at all. Um, Sean was not part of it. I was not part of it. Sean had a good friend named Matt who was also very against any of that. And I think maybe there was like maybe 5 at one point up to 10 people who were trying to stop all that. But if you try to stop it, you get in trouble. Like you either get fired or pay deducted or a bunch of retaliation. And a lot of weird, sketchy things were going on. Like we started getting like cops coming in every weekend, kind of like trying to figure out what's going on in the movie theater. We had people coming in. Later, things were getting stolen. I remember saying that, I think, during yesterday's live stream. And it just got crazy from there. And I remember 2017 was kind of like when everybody decided to leave because they said, nah, we're not going to deal with this anymore. We're going to go to a better place, which is what a good chunk of people did. I think the only person who's still at the movie theater is like Matt and one manager that I trained who's supposedly still part of a sketchy group. Um, let's see. Yeah, because Sean was there and he left the movie theater maybe about a year or two ago because he had enough of it. Um, I think Matt's probably the last person who's still there. Um, but now to the second story. Second story involves a fast food chain that I worked at for a short period of time, maybe like a month. Yeah, I worked there for like a month, and I was brought on as a assistant manager. And when I was working there, immediately within the first week of working there, I noticed there was a lot of bad stuff going on. I later found out the general manager, who was the person who hired me, was a big like person who did drugs. I and I started like doing this connection, like who did what and why was this an issue? Why was this going on? And come to find out that the GM was pretty bad there, and she later ended up getting fired from that position. Um, and I know a lot of people who are glad that she was gone from that place. Um, Sean actually worked as a cashier there for a while, and I think Sean and I were, and maybe like two, three other people um, were all right there. However, things started getting crazy. We had a guy who was a maintenance worker who would come in and work on the machines and fix the machines. And we later found out that this guy was the big seller there. He was like bringing in everything and selling it to everybody. Then we had a nighttime manager who was a big user. He liked to use everything. And he had this crazy thing like he would like to tattoo on himself everything that he has done in the past. And for him, it was like collecting like a collection of some sort. Um, so that guy was kind of crazy. Then there was a lot of people who would like use drugs and then disappear during the middle of the work shift. Um, and as soon as I realized, this is some kind of a weird setup here, I was like, nah, I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna work here. Plus, uh, they actually have deducted some of my pay. And apparently, what happened later on was somebody like from corporate or somebody found out. And this after I had left. This was probably like a year after I left. People start getting in trouble finally. Um, Now, for the last story, uh, it's kind of a more recent story. I want to say it's about 2, 3 years ago. For a short period of time, I worked for a solar panel company, but they had me go do sales, door to door sales, which wasn't really what I wanted. So they put me into that like team of people, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to pay you an hourly rate, plus we're going to pay you a commission if you sell solar panels." And I was like, "All right." And basically, I was okay with it because it's the only job that they had for me at that point. Plus, I was getting paid to walk around, which I like because you get paid to kind of you know walk around neighborhoods, which is fun to do, I guess. Um, but what I found out was that everybody on this team were what's the word, like weed heads. They like to smoke weed all the time, and I was not comfortable with that. So what I ended up doing was we ended up I ended up leaving that main crew. It was myself and this Mexican friend that I had, who were the only people. Yeah, it was me and and this Mexican guy. We were the only people who were part of like the hard worker group, who actually wanted to make money and went to work to make money. Work to work, right? Um, and we were like weirded out by the whole thing, that we were trying to work there, but what we noticed was that they started doing these weird like once a week slash 2 times a week meetings, where you would have to go to a meeting, listen to some conference call, and then right after this conference call, people were trying to get up together to go figure out where to go and smoke and do drugs and all that. And I was like, oh, okay, this is weird. So I left, and then my friend left a month later because they stopped paying everybody hourly wages. They only wanted to pay commission. So that's probably the last story. But yeah, this has been Thigh Company, guys. If you have not already, Make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you all next time, guys. Peace out.